Hi, and welcome to HMP's podcast. I am here with Beth Lennon, and we are going to discuss our favorite topic, which hopefully is one of your favorite topics as well, which is our Gen Z and our Gen Alpha, which seems to be the scariest topic of all for anyone in the workforce. And we want to shed some light on the fact that it shouldn't be scary at all. And we still have named our podcast The Fear of Snowflakes because that's what we seem to be afraid of, is this idea that anyone under the age of, we'll say 30, 35, seems to be the scary generation of individuals in the workforce. And so I know, Beth, that you and I talked before we started, and we decided we were going to talk a little bit about the idea of hybrid, remote, and in-person work, which I have to admit I had a misconception of. I assumed, and assuming is the wrong thing to do, as we all know, but I assumed that everyone of that generation wanted a remote work. And that's really not the case, is it?
I don't think so. I think because we are so online as a generation with phones and social
Okay.
media and school nowadays too, every single thing is online. And I think especially during COVID, that really got implemented and we were away from school for like a whole year. So in my opinion, I feel like most people are like tired of that by now, and people are craving like human interaction. And I think that it's so important to be in the workplace and work with other people to learn and to grow, because that's really how you pick up on those skills. And yes, while we have so many resources available to us, like the internet and AI and stuff to help us learn on our own, I think it's really important to learn from people who are experienced in the field. And I don't know, I just feel like you can't get that like valuable information from the internet all the time.
Well, and you can't get it from a Teams mess or a Teams meeting either. And what's funny is I always thought that because you guys are so hooked and connected to your phones and computers, that that meant you wanted to be disconnected from the human interaction or human connection. And I think that's where I made the mistake. And I didn't take in consideration the fact that you guys were forced for a long period of time to do that. Like you didn't have the opportunity to interact on a day-to-day basis with your fellow students. And so you were just attached to a computer system or a phone system for so long. And now you're in college and you guys are 90% of the time it's face to face in college, right? Or are you finding it's a mix nowadays where classes are
Yeah,
as well?
it's definitely a mix. Like there are a lot of classes that you could either choose to take online or in person. I usually tend to go for the in-person classes just because I learn easier that way. But definitely like now more than ever, there are more online classes available. And I do know a lot of people that choose to do that. But I think like my friends and I always talk about it. We agree that it's so much more valuable to like be physically in the classroom and learn that way.
So are they offering the same class, like either or? So like you could do English 101 online or English 101 in class. So they're really doing both. It's not like, oh, only these particular courses are here or there.
Yeah, so like since
Oh,
a lot of the
interesting.
class, so since I go to a really big school, I think it's easier for them to put some of the sections online so that they can have more sections and more times. And it's easier for the teachers, I guess, to not always have to be on campus. But it's usually like the gen ed classes that have that option. I don't know if English does, but I know like econ has it, some math classes. But I don't know.
Wow.
I personally can't learn online very
No.
well.
Me either. And I get my energy from people. Like
Me
that is
too.
how I thrive. And so the idea of doing everything on a computer system, it just I would never thrive at all. So I get that. So then what are you finding? Are you finding that people take it for granted? And so when you're getting conversations, people assume you're only going to want to work from home or only want to take classes, online? Or are people asking you? Are you finding people saying, "Hey, what would you like?" Or is it more of an assumption kind of thing?
I feel like people do often assume that you would rather like work from home or take classes online, because I feel like there's often this perception that it's like easier, which I think that can be definitely true at sometimes. But I just think it really depends on the type of learner and type of person you are. Like for us, if we get our energy from people, that's never going to help us to be like isolated and alone and trying to learn everything by ourselves without the help of other people. But yeah, I do feel like there's a misconception about that. But like my advisors at school are always like, I really encourage you to not take the online class if you can. I just think it's so much more valuable to like be in the classroom. And these professors are also like they've worked so hard to get to be in this position, like 10 years of schooling for a
Oh, I
PhD.
know.
I
Yeah.
feel like they deserve to have students sit in their classrooms and listen to what they're so passionate about.
I agree. And I think that projects are a great example. Like in class projects, doing them online, I've done class projects online, and it is not the same thing as actually physically working together and collaborating. I find that it's a lot easier when you're doing it online to actually not just go, hey, you do this part, you do this part, you do this part, and collaborate off the end. When you're physically forced to be in the same space, you work together, you communicate, you talk through it, you disagree, you come to, a consensus. It's a lot different. And I find you come up with the best ideas when you do that. And I think work environments are exactly the same, which is why I agree with you. I think when you work remotely, you have a tendency, even on teams, you have a tendency to just do your part of the job and then turn it in or hand it off or whatever the case may be. To where if you work in a collaborative environment inside of an office setting, you communicate back and forth and you talk and you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I tried it that way and it didn't work, and here's what I did differently. And you actually come up with a better product in the end. I think it's a big deal.
Definitely. And I also feel like it cuts your time in half. Like if someone's tried
100%,
it
yeah.
some way and you've been trying to do it on your own but haven't communicated that, like I feel like it's so much saves so much more time for you to be like, I did it this way, it didn't work. You try a different way, or like let's come up with a solution together. I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, like you were saying with group projects, often you're like working against each other almost. And like when you should be working together, and it would be easier if you just communicated and did it
So
together.
I think that a good takeaway for employers are stop assuming that everyone of that generation wants to work remotely and instead ask the question, or even better, go to your job descriptions and really that team and say what is best for the organization, right? What environment is this team going to thrive in? Is this going to be an environment where people can work hybrid? Do I have to have everyone remote? Do I have the space to have everyone in the office? And then that's how you build out what you want. And then when you talk to people when you're interviewing them, ask them, say, hey, hey, Beth, this position, I'm looking for someone who can be in the office 3 days a week. Is that something that interests you? Right? Don't assume that Beth is going to always say no, or Beth is going to say, well, I only want to come in once a month, right? Ask the question, say, I think this is successful when people are in the office 3 days a week. Is that something that you would be interested in? Right? Because you're not forcing anyone, you're not assuming anything, you're offering something and telling why it's important. And I think your generation likes to hear that. The why is important to your generation. I've learned that already. Like, it's not one of those situations where you want someone to just tell you what to do. You want to know why behind it. So, as an employer, tell them the why. Give them the reason why you think it's going to be successful, because it's more collaborative, because it's an open environment, because the people in your department have many years of experience and you're going to learn more by being in that physical environment with them, whatever it is, right? But give the why, and I think the buy-in is better for people to want to become a part of that.
Yeah, definitely. I also, like you said, the hybrid work, I feel like that's gotten way more attractive to people because
I think so
it
too.
really does give you that work-life balance. You have 3 days in the office, you can learn and collaborate with people then. And then if you want to go on vacation for 4 days, you can, but you can still work. So I think it gives people flexibility if it's a schedule like that. Because like I've seen with my siblings, they first started like fully remote and then now they're like 3 days in, 2 days out, and they like that so much better just because I don't know, I feel like you feel a lot more productive when you're actually in the office and feel like you're forced to be doing the work, whereas at home there's so many more distractions and I can feel like you're just wasting your time almost.
It's true. And you have to, if you're going to work remotely, you have to be able to do that. Not everyone can, right? They really can't. Some people don't have the right environment or setup for it. And sitting on your couch in the middle of the room is not a setup for an office, right? You really do have to, I don't care if it's just a small table in the middle of the kitchen or wherever it is, right? But you have to create an environment or a space to work. Otherwise, people can't, they just can't, they can't think, right? And or the kids are running through the room or whatever it is, right? So make sure you have space in your home for an office environment. That's the first thing to always do if you're going to work remotely. And then second, know what work has to be done in an office versus what work you can do at home, right? And then always try and split that. Because I know for me, if it's something like spreadsheets are a big one for me to do at home because I'm not being interrupted all the time. And if I really have to dive into spreadsheets, which by the way, I hate, those are my worst, those are my nemesis, spreadsheets are. But if I have to do that, or if I'm reading a handbook, right? So for me, handbooks are a big thing for my position, right? So if I'm reviewing someone's handbook, sitting at home and doing that in front of my desk where I don't have any interruptions, way easier than if I'm in a work environment where I'm going to get interrupted, people want my time, right? So figure out what you can do in each of those environments so that you can get the best out of it. And employers also are going to get better work from people who have that hybrid kind of schedule. I think people are more engaged when they're in the office when they do that. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, and also there have been studies done, like we always talk about this in school, like don't do your work in your bed. Like dedicate a space for work and for home because that ties into your like mental health too. Like it's all connected. Your work is going to come home with you if it's in the same space that you relax and spend time with your family and stuff. So if you have like a dedicated office or desk or space for work, like leave it there because that it's so much easier to transfer your work life to your home life if it's in the same space where you're at peace and whatever, relaxing.
Yeah, it's true. Not to mention, it's super unprofessional looking. I have had one too many meetings with somebody who you can tell it's the headboard behind them and they're sitting in bed while they're in the meeting. And you're like, this is not appropriate. It just isn't.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst ones. And then you're like constantly trying to communicate, and all you can see is the bed, and you're like, oh, this is not okay. Then you're thinking of other thoughts like, is this really what they're doing? Do they even work during the day? Are they just napping all day? Like those are the things that are in your head. You're not even thinking about, are they productive, right? Or the other one, which is worse, is make sure that, and just like you have right now, your background is fuzzed out, or mine is a fake background. But make sure that you have an appropriate background if you are going to be working from home. One of my funniest memories is I was meeting with a client, and it was an entire board that we were meeting with, and they were deciding whether or not they wanted to work with HMP as their HR consultant. And the executive director of this business, it was a nonprofit business, she was sitting there. It was like a 7 or 8 a.m. meeting, and it was a Zoom meeting. There were 6 people on it, all in their own homes. Her husband was in his boxer shorts, came in to give her a cup of coffee. That was all he had on in the middle of this meeting. No joke. It's those kinds of moments where you're like, really, you couldn't have blacked out your background. And everyone was like still trying to keep the meeting going. And I was like, this did not just happen in the middle of this meeting. So it's those kinds of things where you like, think about your background. Think
Yeah.
about what's going on behind you when you're going to work from home, right? You just have to think that one through because you're not always alone in your home, right? So if you're going to do it, just like you said, create an environment where you feel like you can be successful at a home and make it different than the rest of your home, right?
Yeah,
Separate it out.
definitely.
I know now I'm looking behind me like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm in an office, so it doesn't matter. So what else for your generation is important about a hybrid? So one of the things I want to know is, and this is just me, I'm one of those people who on my desk, I have four, count them, four screens. So I like to have a lot of space and a lot of stuff when I'm working remotely. Are you one of those people that has to have a lot of technology, or is it just laptop and that's all you want? Like, what's important when you're creating your home environment?
Yeah, for me, I just have a laptop, but I feel if I was doing like all the work that you're doing, I definitely would need different screens to keep it all organized. So maybe in the future that would be helpful to get like a monitor and a laptop, but I think four would be a little bit too much for me. I think maybe just two.
Okay, so I said the same thing when I first got my desk set up. And I was like, I will never use this. This is ridiculous. And I actually asked the other day if I could have a fifth one. So I would never say never. The reason I asked about you is because your generation is so used to a screen constantly attached to them that I wanted to know, like technology wise, do you use your laptop? Do you use your phone? When I'm moving this direction because my phone's sitting there. Um, but do you use your phone to work? Like, do you email and open up documents and that kind of stuff on your phone to work, or does it always have to be your computer?
I never open up documents on my phone, but definitely like if someone chats me or sends me an email that I want to respond to quicker, I'll just do it on my phone because I always have notifications on. So it just pops up like easier on my
So
phone.
you're versatile. So that's
Yeah.
something unique about your generation too. I will say it took a long time for me to want to use my phone as a resource for business. Not because I'm not capable, because I use my phone every day all the time. But for me, there was this brain switch that I was like, it's not professional to use your phone as a computer, right? So if I'm using it to text instead of going to my computer to send an email, the transition just made me feel like it was unprofessional. And it was probably maybe just a couple of years ago where I was like, No, it's really not. It's just being able to respond quicker than opening up, even on my phone, opening up Gmail or Outlook or whatever, and then sending an email and all of that, right? Being able to just send a quick Teams message or a quick Google chat or a quick text message, it is just as professional and it's quicker. So you just have to be careful who you're sending it to and what you're sending. As my husband always reminds me, since he sent an I love you message to his boss one time instead of me. So, you're just always gotta be careful what you're sending and who it's sending to.
That's hilarious.
He now double checks every time before he hits send. His boss took it well. His boss looked at it and sent back a message and said, You're not getting a raise, so don't even ask. So yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
But I was just curious. So technology is important for your generation, hybrid work, but making sure you're being asked what you guys are looking for and wanting, not assuming, right? Collaboration's important. Now, so talk to me a little bit about the intimidation factor. So you're working because you said you like the idea of collaborating with and learning from, but how is that? So coming into a work environment where you may be absolutely new in work and coming into an environment where there are people who have like 10, 15 years experience in that field, and you're now in an office environment working with them collaboratively. Do you find that intimidating, exhilarating, exciting, nerve-wracking?
It definitely can be intimidating. I feel like the thought of it is more intimidating than when you're actually there. But I do feel like it also depends on the person. Like, if they're a good teacher and they're really wanting to teach you like what they're working on, then I think that's not intimidating. But I think you also do find those people where it's just like, here's your work, like, get it done, like expecting you to know more than you actually do. So I think it really depends.
The reason I ask is because that's what I think I'm always worried about is why your generation is always looking to work remote is because of that intimidation factor about working in an office environment with individuals of the older generation who may have 20 plus years experience in that field, right? And does that intimidate you to want to work in that environment where you could work at home and figure it out on your own? Because one thing about Gen Z is that you guys are super resourceful. So if you don't know how to do it, you're freaking going to figure it out. My generation, will ask people to help us. We'll take our time. We'll fumble through it ourselves and be too stubborn to ask for help and do it wrong 3 times before we do it right. But your generation has a tendency to actually go out and find a source and a solution. And it's not by asking people, it's usually by going out to the net, right? So you're going to go out, you'll YouTube it, you'll AI it, right? You'll go out and find a resource to teach you how to do it. That's what I'm worried about. So I'm worried does that mean that you guys are going to be too intimidated in an office setting to ask help from the people who know how to do it, and you're going to just want to do it yourself and figure it out? Or what does that generation need to do to help you guys feel like you can come to them?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think maybe the first thing people would do is ask AI, but I've heard from other people that like if they're working remotely and they don't want to bother someone, they'll look at AI first or Google or whatever and see if they can figure it out on their own. But I've also heard that if you're in person, then I think people are more willing to just go over and ask, like if they don't look busy. So I think that when you're remote, it's a lot more common for people to just try to figure it out themselves. But in the office, it like kind of forces people to like go ask, because I also feel like it's not really a good look for you to like just be pulling up ChatGPT all the time, like asking it things. So maybe they would be kind of intimidated by that and want to go ask instead.
And so I think a good takeaway for that is just employers and leaders in general. Reminder, make sure that you're helping your team be really open to asking the question, hey, how's it going? Hey, can I help? Hey, how's that project going? Do you need any assistance with, is this making sense? Right? So asking the question as opposed to assuming is a big one. And I think questions make things a little less intimidating, right? So when we assume, when we question you as opposed to the work that you're doing, then it puts people on their heels. But when we question the work that you're doing, then it's easier for you to just be able to say, yeah, I totally need some help, or I'm not understanding, or here's what I did. Is this look correct, right? And so making sure people are really open in work environments, I think is important to get you guys to want to be in a work environment.
Yeah, and I also think that like goes back to like more hands-on leadership for Gen Z. Like
Mhm.
we want to be told like, oh, like I'm open to ask, like getting asked questions about things. Like I think people would rather you ask and you do it right than you do it wrong and having to fix it a bunch of times. So I feel like employers, if they were just like really open and saying, ask me questions, like I want to make sure you're learning and doing this correctly. I just feel like it saves time and like just makes it easier in the end.
That makes sense. So big question in regards to this whole remote hybrid work environment. How do I word this the most positive way possible? In your generation, how are you with structure as opposed to flexibility? What I mean by that is I'm finding that even though you're saying when I say you, I mean the generation is saying, I want a hybrid work environment. What they're really saying is, I want to come and go as I please, not I want to come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 5 and work from home Tuesday, Thursday. What I'm hearing is, I'm going to come in the office a few days a week and I'm going to work from home a few days a week, but not structured days, which is really difficult from an employer's perspective, especially because most employers nowadays are saying specific days that they want everybody in. So there's a lot of collaboration and team building during those days, which makes total sense. So, what do we do to help get that in place? Because flexibility is critically important to Gen Z, 100% understood. But that can't be one of those areas of flexibility. Do you know what I mean? There has to be a little more structure to it. What would your recommendation be to gain that in that kind of remote hybrid world?
Well, I feel like if you had it so that you always had like either a Friday and then the weekend, or if it was a Monday that was remote, people would be more inclined to do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, like, or like, yeah, any days like that. And then have either Monday or Friday be remote so that they can do whatever on the weekend. And it almost makes it feel like your week is like easier by the end of it if you get most of your work done in the office and then have a little bit more flexibility towards the weekend. I think people would be more enticed to want to do that instead.
Okay, so you're saying have the flexibility built into the days that you're not coming in, and they'd be more okay having structure for the days you are coming in.
Yeah.
I like it. I get that. So I think that's a good takeaway for business owners and leaders to figure out how you're going to structure your teams. So structure the days that are important, but give a lot of flexibility on the days that aren't. And
Yeah.
the good way of doing that is don't schedule meetings on the days that it's a remote day, right?
Yeah.
Unless necessary, right? And don't schedule really early morning or late afternoon meetings. If there is one, try and do it at the same time every single day that you're doing it, kind of thing, so that there's a little bit more flexibility in that. I like that. Okay. So you're still getting, from a business perspective, exactly what the business is needing, but allowing that person to have a lot more of their own ownership of their time scheduling.
Yeah.
I like that. That makes sense. Okay. So, any other takeaways for business leaders on how to do this the right way for your generation?
Yeah, I think just what you were saying, like ask instead of assuming. I think people are way more flexible to learning from the professionals in the business and actually wanting to get better at their job and wanting to get higher positions and just continue to grow in the business. than employers think they are. And I also think that would make people stay longer. Like if you invest the time in the new employees, they will value that and want to stay like true to the company and like stay loyal. So I think if you give them flexibility, but also invest the time into teaching them in person, then that would be really valuable.
I love it. And I think we've just come up with our next topic, which is going to be hands-on leadership, which I love. I'm excited to hear more about that. But I think some key takeaways are ask, don't assume, provide framework. So making sure that we have structure and flexibility in the same kind of work week. Hybrid, but team collaboration, critically important. And then also provide training and open communication with your teams. And I think those are some key things that'll help create an environment where both teams are going to want to work together and you're going to get more people in the office. And then as a business owner, you know what? You're going to be lucky because this generation wants to be in the office more, which is good because the millennials, no, not so much. They still want to work from home all the time. It's ridiculous. They're throwing a fit if they have to come in the office, even 2 days a week half the time. So I think this is good. We're getting that transition back to bringing those people back into the office, which will provide way better ideas, is going to provide better leadership because you have to have leaders who want to be in the office. So now we get to start talking about how we build your generation of leaders, but we know that your generation wants to be in the office, which is good. I think building leadership is going to be difficult. One, because you guys don't have a lot of role models for that because of the pandemic. It really affected it. And two, you're going to have to learn how to lead baby boomers, which is literally impossible. One, because they're transitioning out and they don't want to be led anymore. And two, it's really difficult to lead people that are your grandparents' age. Not going to lie. Like, it's awkward for both sets. Just going to say that now. So you have to figure out how to do that the right way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in our next podcast as well. So I want to say thank you again, Beth, because you're always full of insight. And please, please, please reach out to us if you guys have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, because we are an open book and we want to do everything we can to help the next generation find a really cool niche inside of the work environment and not scare off all of the leaders and business owners who are afraid of anyone under the age of 25. So thanks again for being a part of HMP, and reach out if there's anything we can do to support or help you. Hope you guys have a terrific day.
Bye.